well, let's go ahead and get into the questions. Bryce, do we want to start with kind of Sal's cost plus question, and then we can go from there?
Go for it. Yeah, Sal, do you want to? Well, yeah, we can kind of intro it. So, overarching view, what is cost plus? Obviously, Nicole and I can tell you tons about that, but is there anybody that has switched to that recently that could maybe talk about the difference or like maybe the points that you were unsure about that kind of make it most clear and helpful for you? Anybody that can kind of help Sal out with that?
I was hoping Riley was here.
I mean, one of the things that I've found with the cost plus that's been super beneficial is whenever we're having that conversation of when I line item my estimates, each line item is what either my sub has bid or what I expect that particular line item to cost. And then I have the builder overhead and builder fee at the bottom, which would be however you guys, I name them builder fee for specific reason. But if they're like, well, hey, your estimate's high or your estimate's this, or they try to negotiate with you, well, you can't negotiate the line items, right? Because that's what I'm actually going to pay. So then I have a line item for my overhead. Well, you can't really negotiate that line item because I know my overhead is roughly 10% of my revenue. It's that way every year. So I know that's what it is. So the only thing they can negotiate now is how much money the company is making or I'm making. And now then, well, I either didn't sell the value of the company and why I'm worth that 20%, or it's somebody that doesn't value what you're bringing to the table. And so if they're trying to determine how much money I'm worth, then it's either one of those two things. Either they don't think I'm worth it, or I haven't explained myself and explained my value to them. So they're either not my customer, or I need to explain a little bit more of why, kind of like Philip said earlier, this is why I'm worth this, if that helps anybody.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Maria, I see your hand up.
I'm not Riley, but I'll do my best on this one.
So
I'm Riley's office manager, in case you guys don't know, and I fill in because he's usually running around. But we just switched to cost plus, and something I've noticed customer feedback is like they know exactly what they're getting, and they don't feel like we're hiding anything. So then throughout the process, they don't feel like we're hiding anything. So if we're like, hey, this is behind schedule, they can trust us on that. Or, hey, this will be in, or we will fix this. They know, hey, they've been upfront to this point. They're not trying to shake more money out of us, or if we ask for like a change order, it's just an honest conversation the whole time, which is really helpful. And the value thing, like I cannot talk to you about that like enough. Like in my initial phone call with them, I list all the things. Okay, we use Builder Trend. You'll get updates every week. You'll get a schedule you can access. You can see everything line by line. And then going back to one of the wins, someone said, I even ask, okay, they're like, oh, we have this bathroom we want to remodel. Is there anything else in the house you want us to look at? Well, we were kind of thinking about our kitchen cabinets. Of course, let us look at that too, because we might not sell the bathroom, but we might sell the cabinets. So like cost plus is all about transparency and then proving your worth. Okay, we have a project manager. He's going to be on the site. He's going to communicate with you. We have to pay him. Here's the line item. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, definitely.
Huge.
That's good. And I threw this in the chat. If someone else wants to give some more as well, feel free to do more after I say my 2 cents here. But threw this in the chat, Salvador, that is a tool that makes it easy to start to look at cost plus pricing. All that it really means is you figure up the cost to you and add in your margin that you need at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it? I think it was Philip that was saying that the difference between markup and margin is really, really significant. A quick, easy example that I'll give is if you're finding a 20% margin or trying to get 20% profit by multiplying by 1.2, right? You charge the customer $12,000. If you take that $2,000 of profit divided by the $12,000 that you charge the customer, that's actually a 16% margin at best. So if your numbers aren't lining up on your P&L at the end of the year, this is part of the reasons why. You could never have achieved actually a 20% on your P&L statement because you're not charging 20%. So what you have to do instead is you have to take that $10,000 that it cost you and divide it by 0.8, which is just 1 minus that 20% margin. Then you charge 12.5, and if you take that 2,500 divided by the 12.5, that's actually 20%. So it's a simple difference in math, but that's what Philip was talking about earlier when he said doing margin versus markup as another tool. So this spreadsheet is already set up to do that, where at the bottom here, what Jay was talking about, where there's a separate line item for what his overhead cost is for the year, you can adjust that based on what your P&L actually shows. And then same thing with your contractor fee, whatever you're actually wanting to make as a profit margin at the end of the day. Pardon me, you can adjust that here. So cost plus is a really straightforward system where you just figure out what it costs you to do the job, what you're going to pay, and then add your margin all at once at the end, rather than trying to get markup within each line item or labor mark or a subcontractor or anything like that. It's all about transparency, like others were saying.
Now, a quick note on cost plus, Bryce, if you want to just share that again real quick, is you can't necessarily do cost plus pricing if you don't know what your overhead percentage is. You're flying blind there. So if you'll see when you're looking at the rows 40 and 41, we're marking up this job 30%. How this imaginary client knows that they need to mark up this job 30% is they know out of my entire revenue, so my revenue for the entire year, I know that 10% of that is going straight to overhead. And the only reason I know that is because they're keeping track of their overhead. So they can say, hey, I spent blank amount on overhead these past 12 months. I did blank amount of revenue. What is that percentage? And so we know, okay, if we want to pull a 20% profit and 10% is what we spend on overhead, I need to mark this job up 30%. That's going to cover my 10% overhead and it's going to give me a 20% profit. And so if anybody does not know their overhead percentage, get with your coach. We can talk about it. We even have videos that explain what overhead is, how to find it. But if I have a client who's like, hey, it says that we have 40% profit at the end of the year, but I don't have this money, I don't know where it's going, most of the time it's your overhead that you're just not calculating that into. Any questions on that? I know that this is kind of a big topic with a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, the one thing I'm still struggling with and still massaging as we kind of shift to the margin strategy is like, we do large remodels and additions and accessory dwelling units that are like, $400,000, $500,000 project. Is there like any sway in that margin that you should be charging due to economy of scale or just because I feel like we're getting some sticker shock if we do go to that full 30% margin on those huge projects, and just curious about what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. So for me with that question, Philip, it's totally discretionary in your court. If you decide you want to do economy of scale and give people a bit of a discount, that's fine. But as far as your overhead percent goes, that doesn't matter. Your overhead percent is what it is for the sake of the business. And your profit margin, if you're willing to sacrifice part of your profit margin to try to win the job, that's up to your discretion. But the reality is those are the numbers. Every job you do needs to do this on a small scale, so it should do this on a large scale as well.
100%.
So I would say it's up to your discretion. Michael, you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I hear what Philip's saying, because some of that overhead is a fixed cost where it's going to be met at a lower percentage. And then once you get past that fixed cost. So how do you fill that in? Should we be splitting that overhead to fixed and then ones that are applicable to that actual job? Does that question make sense? Your insurance doesn't change based on an $800,000 job or a $100,000 job,
I think you're
Yeah.
overthinking it, Michael.
possibly.
I think you're overthinking it, get into the weeds a little bit, where by looking at like 12 rolling months of this is what I spent on overhead in these 12 rolling months, and then looking at how much revenue you brought in and finding your percentage that way, like you don't need to worry about, hey, what is fixed and what isn't. It's just like simply, this is the percentage that I spent on overhead. So this is what I have to make sure is calculated onto my prices. And so like, don't get
Right.
in more into the weeds with that than you need to. You don't need to get more into the weeds with it. If you're trying to like single out how much of my overhead I spent on this one particular job, you're going to be going crazy trying to figure
Okay.
all of that out. And so just
Yeah.
take it from like 12 rolling months. Now there are cases, guys, where if your overhead's 40 freaking percent of your revenue, oh, red flag. We've got to fix something. You know, like that's way too high. Typically being 15 and 20%. So if yours is more than that, let's have a conversation of what we need to do. And eventually, what you spend on overhead each month does kind of get pretty stagnant, where it's like, hey, I spend about 10 grand each month on overhead, and that's kind of where it stays. And so at that point, the more revenue that you do, if the amount that you spend on overhead each month stays the same, naturally that overhead percentage comes down a little bit. And so that's going to give you a little bit more flexibility in your prices. But again, if Philip, if you're worried about, hey, if I can't charge 30%, I promise you, you can. Lean into the value that you're providing. Never necessarily give a discount or come off of price. Don't change your prices, add value. You can always customize estimates. Hey, we can't do all of this, but we can do blank, blank, or blank, and this will fit into your budget. You know, so just don't cornhole yourself there. Other thing I can do a discount. Add value, give options, don't lower price.
It's good. It's really good. The only thing I would add to that, to your point as well, Michael, is just thought experiment this out a little bit further. Unless it's a job that takes you from being a $500,000 a year company to, $1.5 million a year company, your overhead is still going to be that percentage on all of the jobs you do. The other thing that's going to be true too is a $1 million company and a $7 or $8 million company is still probably going to have roughly that same percentage. So as you start to do that job, even if you close that job, your overhead's going to have to increase to supplement and facilitate doing it as well. So that's another part to consider of why we're maybe more mathematically, like, why are we saying you still need to charge what you need to charge? Good stuff. Any other thoughts or questions here?
Yeah, on that issue, guys, I mean, that's like something that us as contractors, I guess, go through a lot. And a lot of my jobs are commercial as well, so they're a little bit larger scale, like in the scale project. And sometimes you deal with well, should I charge the 30%? I really try not to go below 30%, and if and when I try to be selective. Like, is the job going to happen fast? Is it gonna pay fast? And is it a simple job? Because if it's a simple job and it's quick money, then it makes sense. But yeah, you have to make it up somewhere else eventually, because the numbers are the numbers. But I try to stick at 30%, even if it's a large job, and try to be selective on the large jobs to where I'm the most competitive. So it makes sense for the 30%, because some jobs, like in my business, I'm a glazing contractor, and curtain wall jobs everybody's bidding at 30-40%. That's just, it's a custom material, custom stuff. So I try to be selective on those kind of things.
That's good. Nice. All right. Any other thoughts or questions? Doesn't have to be about cost plus stuff unless that's still on your mind. But what other questions do we have this morning? What brought you in to join the call?
This is Corey. I just had one quick question. So we are an exteriors kind of a restoration company. We've looked at cost plus. We haven't jumped over to that just yet. We've got enough irons in the fire, but we're measuring our financials. We're evaluating what our gross margin needs to be when we estimate it. The problem is like we use a lot of subcontractors. So we've got some of our subcontractors, we will purchase the material for them and then we'll pay them for their labor. But then others, we will pay them full turnkey where it's their material and their labor combined. So how does it fit into modeling up a cost plus? Because if you're doing full transparency, I'm trying to picture how that's going to look.
Yeah. Good question. So another reason that we like cost plus is because it's not something that you have to figure in your markup on every item. It comes in one bulk option, or not option, but part at the end. So if you have subcontractors that are including their materials versus not, you can have the materials for the separate trades in a separate line item if you like, but the math is still going to work out the same. The numbers are still going to work out the same at the end. So these are the costs that you're going to pay, whether that's subcontractor cost or material cost. Was that all of your question, Corey?
Yeah, no, I think so. Really, in a sense, we are doing the math at a high level from a cost plus standpoint to determine where we need to be. The question is more regards to, I hear a lot of people talking about the value of full transparency. And we're using Buildertrend. They're obviously kind of pro cost plus as well. I know there's a lot of interior modelers that use that software because you can give just the full detail of here's where we're at. Here's all the line items and the material costs per line item, and then our markup associated with that. And I'm just trying to picture how that would look with our company, given we don't have a full breakdown like that on everything.
So I guess one question that I have is if it's specifically because some subcontractors will include materials in a total price and others won't. Have you asked for them to separate out or to give you a price for each part, like the labor and the materials?
Yeah, with some of them, it's really challenging. I mean, we could find new subcontractors and probably set the standard, from the beginning. It just wasn't. So yeah, it's kind of there's some resistance to letting us get into that level of detail with them. But and it just depends on the subcontractor. I would say probably 70% of them, we can itemize it, but then there's that 30% that we can't. And sometimes that's a pretty big dollar amount.
Gotcha. Sal, did you have your hand up earlier? You wanted to chime in on this?
Yeah, well, I had a concern on my end. So we don't do much subcontracting jobs out. Pretty much the only things that we sub out are roofing. We'll sub out the more difficult roofs. We will sub out concrete. And then other than that, just HVAC, electrical, plumbing. Now, so I'd like to implement that cost plus on at least those right off the bat. But for a lot of the other stuff that involves more detailed work, like finished carpentry, it's hard for me to want to get a price from a sub and then tack onto that when pretty much I'm meeting with the owner, going through things, getting my own price breakdown on my own worksheets and going from there. Then after that, finding a sub who might work with numbers that are just low enough under mine where we can make something work. So I'd like to know, in your opinion, am I kind of going about that a little backwards?
It sounds like you're So are you saying that you're unsure if you can do this whenever you're performing the work, self-performing versus using subcontractors, if you can do cost plus?
Yeah, I guess so. So, yeah, I guess I don't have set prices for every trade that we perform in the field. I don't have set prices for what other people might charge me. So, but I'd like to be able to guarantee to myself and my team that we have people we can sub out any of this to if we get too busy.
Yeah. James, I'm going to have you speak on this, but real quick. Sal, are you saying, hey, I typically quote jobs before, like I know the exact price from the sub, like I'm usually giving an estimate back, and then once they move forward, I'm getting the exact price for the sub from the sub, or do you typically, when you go to quote the job, you've already talked to the sub? What's kind of the...
Yeah, so when I go to quote the job, I have not talked to the sub yet because
I see.
typically I'm pricing it out with the prices that will work for us, me and my guys, versus if I get an accepted assigned contract on that job, I might get swamped and then I try to bring it to a sub and they say, hey, those prices don't work for me. And I'd like to avoid that in the future. So I don't know if maybe I should meet with each subcontractor individual, try to get their per foot price, whatever it may be, to then upcharge that way.
You just answered your own question. And I think I see a bunch of hands going up that are people who I think
Yeah.
have been where you are and are and are like, hey, we've had to do it too. Is like as you're getting more established, you're going to have your subs and you're going to work with them and you're going to get a better idea of what they are charging. And so that then you're not having to, most of the time, you're always going to have weird situations where you're like, hey, this is unique. I'm going to get my sub out to quote it, you know.
Right.
But you're going to get a good feel. And then cost plus is going to be super easy because you already know, you know, and then you're not having to like go back. Now, one thing I want to so emphasize to everybody is change orders do happen. There are things that are unforeseen. So even if you didn't consult with your sub and when you get into the job, you're like, oh shit, this is weird. I need to go talk to my sub. Don't be scared to go talk to the owner. That's construction. That is remodeling. Set the expectations before the job starts that that crap can happen. And then you just say, hey, this is the new price and timeline. Here's, you know, that's just construction. It's a change order. So like, don't feel, I never want you, unless you truly effed up, a guy broke something, did something wrong, and now we're having to redo it. I never want changes to like hit your profit, you to eat that, you know? I saw a couple hands go down, so I don't know if I covered what you guys wanted to say. But Philip, if you want to chime in, Lance, I saw your hand too. But James, I'm going to let you go first, just because your hand was up the fastest. You were fastest on the draw.
Well, so I don't have any employees. I use all subs, just to preface all that sort of stuff. Now then, what I do is I have subs that I use a lot. And so I have an idea of what they charge. However, whenever I'm presenting, I don't want to go to every single one of my subs for every bid that I have to do and say, hey, what is this? Or can you bid this or whatever? Because that would just take forever. So what I explain to my customer when I'm presenting, and in that line item, let's say it's an electrical line item, it says, this is just an estimate until my electrician can do a job site visit. And I do that on any of those things. And I explain to them, once I get, this is a number that based on my experience working with this guy, I think it's going to be somewhere around in this area. And so whenever I get to the end, I just say, if my total price is within your budget, my next step would be to have these subcontractors do a job site visit and get hard numbers from them. And then once we get those numbers, and even if I have allowances for tile or anything like that, I suggest they go find the tile that they want, all that sort of stuff, so that we can dial in that estimate where there are as few change orders as possible, because they're always confusing to homeowners. And just say, and it's an extra step in the process. Like my sales guy hates it because he wants to present, get a signature, get that deposit, and that lock that thing in. For me, I like the extra step. Let's get all the numbers right. Then we go to contract from there. And that's just one way that if you think you might have subs on the job, that they may be up or down, is to just let your homeowner know up front, this is an estimate until this guy can do a job site visit and give me a hard number.
Mhm.
And that's worked really well for me.
And is super normal. Super normal. Yeah, and I have some clients where they're like, "Hey, if you want like hard numbers and you think you're going to move forward, we can absolutely do that. I do charge a $250 estimate fee just so that and that will go towards your job. It'll get the price off, whatever. But that's just covering the time that's going to take me to get my subs out here, get hard estimates, all that stuff. So just so that at that point, they have a little bit of skin in the game because now you're spending a lot more time on that estimate. And so I know $250 is not going to cover your time, but it does kind of give you a little bit more of a guarantee that they will move forward. Philip, what you got, sir?
Agree to all that. That's all great stuff. One thing that's really helped us, especially like we end up in a lot of situations where we're competitively bidding, so we're trying to find some more cost effective subs and get some more competitive bids from our contractors. And one thing we'll do is, like, if we get a really low number, we'll roll with it, but add some fluff to kind of safeguard our estimates a little bit. And then another thing we do is just our contingency is a big thing. And the contingency really shoulders a good chunk of like unforeseens in the job. And if we didn't get a hard bid from a sub and we're just throwing a estimate in there for their number, that contingency usually covers any overages.
Love it.
Jake, what do you got, sir?
Hey guys. Yeah, so we pretty much do the same thing as what we're talking about here, where we subcontract everything out and working through this as we scale as well. And one thing I wanted to get some input from the group. How are you guys going in, I guess, interviewing or verifying that these subcontractors are good? I mean, what we've done in the past is just look at their job sites, call their references, and really do that due diligence. But I'm wondering, does anyone have any other tips that has worked really well to verify these guys?
Use them on a small job. Use them on a small job first, I'd say. That's like a big thing that we do, is like, if you want to use somebody new, like, find a really, really small job and that's not high risk, and then give them a go at that first.
Yeah.
One of the ways that I've found them is just other GCs and other guys that do the similar work that I do, that I'm friends with. I'm lucky. One of my best friends has been remodeling for 30 years. And I've only been doing it for about 6 or 7, but I've known him for 13. So it's pretty simple. And we kind of go back and forth now, but hey, do you have a guy for this? Or, or if we're having problems with one of the guys that we both use, he's like, hey, have you noticed that, this is happening? And then we can address it. But, it's also nice for us because we hardly ever bid the same job. However, we do use a lot of the same subs, so we're able to keep them busy between the two of us, where we keep the good ones busy so they don't run off, to somebody else. But just other maybe if you're in any networking groups or anything like that with guys that do the same thing you do, and just say, hey man, I'm really looking for a good whatever, and they may have a guy that they wouldn't mind sharing with you.
Riley last week with Summit Home Solutions said that he's found a lot of his from Nextdoor. And so I don't know if anybody, like, if you use Nextdoor. I know for myself personally, like, that's how I found my pool guy, my lawn guy, is Nextdoor. So that's a great way to find, you can see people's recommendations. And the same way that people find you is through Google. So don't hesitate to use Google either and read reviews and call people there. If you have an office manager, it's a great thing to incentivize them where it's like, hey, your job today is kind of to build the roster, the bench of subs. I want you to look for electricians. I want you to call through, read some reviews, try to get connected with the owner, see if that's something they're interested in, something that they do. That's a great task. And you can even incentivize your office manager of like, hey, anybody who you bring to us who end up working well, I'm going to give you a $200 bonus, and that's like a little spiff to them for helping you out. So just the
Yeah, I've
ways that
kind of thought
customers will
about-
find you.
I've thought about that, like going to supply houses too and asking those people for
100%.
references and then giving them something if we do end up doing a job with them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
good
great way
advice.
to be too. Is your supply houses, those guys know who sucks at plumbing, and they know who is pretty good at plumbing. So ask them, say, hey, do you know anybody who might be good sub or looking for some work? Has anybody seemed real frustrated with their job this week that you could maybe send my way? Jake, do you have another question with your hand up? I just want to make sure you're good.
No, sorry.
No, you're good. I
Yeah,
just
the
wanted to
put
make
it
sure. I
down.
didn't want to skip over you. Philip, I see your hand.
Yeah, the one last tidbit there is like we usually ask our favorite and best subs who they recommend for different trades, because usually good people that do good work recognize other people that do good work. So we found a lot of guys that way as well.
Love it. Any other questions today? Thoughts?
I will say when looking for finding subs and getting people, one of the things I've learned, I mean, just like finding somebody that can do it is great. And I've met a lot of great subs this way. And like you guys are saying, like meeting them through other contractors, through friends on other job sites, things like that. What I've found is over time that, maybe you do things a certain way and like the way you pay people or, whether you do direct deposit or however you pay them or what you're kind of expecting out of them. I just advise anybody, if you do that with somebody new, just go ahead. And I know it's hard because you're also trying to gain like a new person that you can work with. You want to make it, you're almost like anxious trying to like make sure that it gets, that it works out for you both. But one of the things I've tried to do is set good expectations about things like how I'm going to pay you. I'm not going to pay you without a W-9, you have to have all these kind of like things in a row because it just causes problems for you later down the road. So like, even though they may be great and do great things, if they're not like good business people and you're trying to, elevate your business and do your business correctly, it's just going to cause you more heartache in the end. And you'd rather not work with guys like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And really going through that extra step of setting expectations in the beginning and having those conversations.
And subcontractor agreements are huge.
Amen, Philip. You totally read my mind. And Jake, you said one of my favorite sayings is set expectations in the beginning. That applies to everybody, your employees, your subs, your clients. Set expectations in the beginning. Subcontractor agreements, we have a template for those. And you can make whatever edits that you want to, but it's just setting expectations as if they're an employee, because they basically are. I'm hiring you to work on my job. So here is the terms and conditions for being on my job. Here's what I expect with how you're going to present yourself, how you're going to communicate to the other subs, the other employees, how you're going to communicate to clients. This is how you're going to get paid. This is how I expect, if a customer comes to talk to you, here's how I want you to handle that. You're just setting expectations, and you want to go over it with each sub before each job and have them sign it. It covers their tail and it covers your tail. We're just making everything out in the open. If you're like, hey, well, I communicate that verbally, that's not enough. Have it written down. If it didn't happen, if it's not written down, if it's not documented. I see Bryce just put that subcontractor working agreement in there. So you guys can, any of these things that we've shared in the group chat today, you can totally, actually, Bryce, do we want to put these in the group chat? Just say, hey, these are the things that we shared in the group call today. Because I know that this chat disappears when we log off. So if you're part of the group chat, WhatsApp, get on it. Bryce is going to put those in there as well. And you can make copies of any of these documents and you can make any edits to it that you want. You're in no way hurting our feelings by doing that. In fact, we like to see it. So make them yours. What other questions? We have just a couple minutes. Can cover something. Comments? Thoughts? Okay. Well, if something does arise, if you want more clarification, talk to your coach, put it in the group chat. You know, there's so many available opportunities for you to get help in between meetings. So take advantage. Jake, what's happening?
Well, I guess while we have a couple of minutes. So with
Yeah.
those expectations, subcontractor agreements, I mean, it definitely depends on the size of jobs, but how have you guys gone through like draw expectations in paying subcontractors, right? Like you're getting a deposit from your client, let's say it's 50% of the job. You kind of know your material and labor for that. Are you giving that full 50% deposit to the subcontractor? Or are you keeping back some? Lance is shaking his head no. Yeah. So what's some experience there?
We recently changed some things. Actually, recently we pay our guys on the first and third Friday. And so the way our kind of rule has always worked, it's always been this way. So if you finish the job by that Monday, you'll get paid that Friday. If you finish it after that Monday, you're going to get on the next pay cycle. And we can do, like, if guys are providing their own materials, we can do like a deposit when we're going to start. But typically I supply all the materials. So they just call me from Home Depot. I order it from wherever. They have to go pick it up, that sort of thing. But our guys just kind of know they're not getting paid. And then we'll even do, like, if it's a longer project, they're going to be there for a while, like a large paint job or something, we'll do like draws with them. You know, they'll get paid in draws. So everybody's got money. But yeah, it was a big deal for us to try to keep track of just paying so many people every week. It's just like somebody's full-time job, just trying to just keep up with who we owe money to. And getting paid ourselves. But that little break in there, that like every other week basically of getting paid, helps us also finish projects up and get our payments in.
Yeah, we say net 15 from completion of work and submission of invoice. So they have to do both in order to like get it in our queue, and then we're net 15 after that. And again, yeah, we do deposits if they want to, but a lot of guys just end up billing us at the end.
Love it. Friendly reminder, money always stays ahead of the work. If you're having a hard time getting out of that cycle, talk to your coach about it, because there could be a lot of different things going on. But never get so distracted by a high revenue that Maya's on profits or cash flow, because that's a great way to go out of business really quickly. I see a lot of head nods. So just money always stays ahead of the work, whatever we need to do to make that happen. Anything else today, guys? This has been awesome.
I just realized that I'm too nice to my guys. It's whatever they get done by Wednesday, I pay them on Friday. We're going to have to figure this out. No, I'm small. I write maybe 10 checks a week, so it's not really a big deal, but
yeah,
at least it's not right now. So
yeah. Well, James, I love that you mentioned that, because that's the power of this group call, man, is even if you don't come with questions, you might come with, things that you didn't even think of. And you're like, whoa, okay, maybe I should do that differently. So even if you don't have questions, we love having you guys tune in and kind of soaking up the wealth here. So
I will say, over when we've made changes, because we used to pay people weekly as well. I will say I've never lost a sub over changing our payment schedule.
Ooh.
So if you fear that, just
I don't. I mean, my guys aren't going anywhere, because I typically, I pay them like a slot machine, and I pay them well. They don't have to worry about if they're going to get paid or not. So, like, I had a roofer, I pulled up on a house during a hailstorm, not during the hailstorm, but right after the hailstorm. And there was another roofing contractor in front of my house talking to my crew leader. And I just walked up and I was like, hey, what's up? And he's like, oh, nothing. I was just asking some questions. And I just looked at Martin and I was like, you want to go work for him? He's like, nope. I was like, is he paying you more? He's like, yep. I was like, you can go work for him if you want to. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, all right. And he looked at me and I was like, I pay him every week without question. They don't go anywhere. He's like, hey man, that sounds good. He got in his truck and took off. So,
Yeah. Amen. Same principle applies if you're scared, if you have clients who you're like, oh, there's no way they won't get off a net 30 or a net 40, or there's no way. Just frickin' ask. Ask and you shall receive. Like say, hey, we want to work with you guys, but we have to get some type of deposit, or can we do some type of draw schedule? Like, just don't be cornholed into those myths of like, oh well, everybody does 30s. No, they don't. So just have the conversation. The worst that somebody can say is no, and if they do, then talk to us so we can ramp up the marketing to get you better leads so you don't have to work for those people. So asking you shall receive. Sal, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so quick question for the guys that are subbing everything out. I aspire to be there 100%. Did you guys start out your business going about it that way, or were you guys in the field for a few years? How did it kind of go for you guys? I really admire that practice.
I've never had an employee ever.
Yeah, we started when, in our 20s, and we were like, we're going to do everything. We're going to do foundation, we're going to do excavation, we're going to do framing. Yeah. And it's fun for a little bit because you're in control of the whole project schedule, all that. But A, we weren't charging enough, and B, we were just run ragged because we didn't have time to do any of the business stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sub everything. We kind of always have. In fact, some of my subs, I have subs that have worked with me for 12 years. They work for us almost every week, for that long. And we had to take breaks every now and then. We mix between people, but I've actually had subs move from other cities to come follow us, to live near us. So they literally have moved from Houston to Austin, live here now, and work for us here.
Yeah, same here. We had subs from the very beginning, inception of the business. So just a lot of relationship building and working with them as you would an employee to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to many quinceañeras, I'll say that.
That is awesome.
It's great. Alrighty. Well, guys, we appreciate y'all being here. Thank you for your feedback, your questions, your wins, all that. It helps everybody all around. You experience it and you benefit from it yourself. So appreciate the mutual contribution and benefit that we're all getting here. So we will let you guys get off into the rest of your week here, and we'll see you later.
See you next Thursday. Bye, guys.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bro, thank you guys.